The TCD B40 is a benchtop, portable FDA Class II medical device intended for use by trained and qualified personnel in hospital, laboratory, and clinical settings for the purpose of making sterile connections of 3.9 mm to 4.5 mm PVC tubing in blood processing applications. The TCD's optimal operating and storage temperature is 10 to 40 degrees Celsius, or 50 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It is very important to follow all procedures outlined in this video and the TCD manual. Failure to do so may result in leaking non-sterile welds. The total containment device features. The alphanumeric display provides operator error warnings, device fault messages, and the total number of weld cycles. The TCD is capable of displaying messages in two modes, in English or symbol mode. When the device is set to symbol mode, graphic symbols are used to replace the text. The display mode can be switched back and forth from the English and symbol mode by holding down the start button during the initial power-up sequence while the TCD message is being displayed. The TCD will turn itself off automatically if left idle for 1 hour. The TCD can be manually turned off by holding down the start button for 5 seconds. The wafer indicator provides a visual indication to the operator by flashing. A blinking heater indicator provides visual indication to the operator that the device is heating the wafer. The case lid indicator provides visual indication to the operator by flashing when the cover is not closed or is improperly closed. The TCD ready indicator provides indication to the operator that the TCD B40 is ready to initiate the weld cycle or that a weld cycle is in progress. The power supply provides regulated 12-volt current to the TCD B40 via an interconnecting cable. The power supply cord is fitted with a hospital-grade plug, which must be connected to a hospital-grade receptacle in order to achieve grounding reliability. The wafer assembly consists of a copper wafer and a plastic holder. The wafer assembly is placed in the vertical guide of the device prior to the weld process. Color coding provided in the plastic holder and the vertical guide assists the operator in the correct placement of the wafer assembly. Wafers are one use only. Do not attempt to reuse wafers. Dispose of used wafers according to your established procedures. The device will fail to operate with a used wafer. Connect the TCD to the power supply by plugging the black locking plug at the end of the TCD cable into the power supply receptacle. Ensure that the black arrow is facing up. Plug the power supply cord into the wall receptacle. With the case lid closed, press the start button. The device will beep and the alphanumeric display will read TCD as the tube holders move to the proper positions for connections. The TCD ready indicator will illuminate and the alphanumeric display will read the weld cycle count. Open case lid and lift both tube clamps. The alphanumeric display will read load. Bend the tubes. The bent tubes will be loaded with the main line on the top and the sample on the bottom. The arrangement of the bent tubes must be consistent between the left and right tube holders. Bend the tubing at a location that will provide a sufficient sample size for verification of weld integrity after the connection has been made. The minimum length of the sample tubing should be no less than approximately 1.5 centimeters, which is the approximate length of the tube holders. When the tubing is bent, the fluid in the tube is gently expressed away from the weld site. At the same time, a natural taper is created. It is this taper that is loaded into the similarly configured taper lock tube loading mechanism to create a positive locking of the tubing in the optimum position for connection. Note that the bent tubes are stacked on top of each other and not side by side. Tubes loaded side by side will result in leaking non-sterile welds. Load the tubing by positioning the bent tube over the tube holder so that the taper of the bent tube protrudes beyond the taper lock. Push the tubing down into the tube holder, and while holding the tubing down with the index finger of your hand, gently pull back until the taper of the bent tube seats itself in the taper lock and clamp into place. It is important to pull back just until you feel the resistance and stop. If the tubing is pulled back too far, it will not be in the optimum position for connection. Note that the bent tubes protrude beyond the taper lock on each side. Tubing that does not protrude beyond the taper lock will be loaded incorrectly, and connections made will result in leaking non-sterile welds. Use the plastic holder from the wafer assembly to make sure the proper amount of the bent tubing is protruding from the taper lock. Load a wafer assembly into vertical guide. Orient the wafer assembly so that the blue side of the wafer assembly matches the color-coded labels on the left side of the device. Press until the wafer assembly clicks into place. Close lid and press the start button to begin welding cycle. The device will beep once. The TCD ready indicator will remain on throughout the cycle. While the wafer is being heated, the alphanumeric display will read heat, and the heat indicator light will flash. After the heat cycle is finished, the TCD will complete the weld cycle. Do not open lid during cycle. When the weld cycle is complete, the TCD will beep once. The display will read done, and the TCD ready indicator will go off. Open the tube clamps and remove the connected tubing by gently pulling the tubing up out of the tube holders. The completed weld should look like this. To separate the attached sample from the main line, hold the main line together in one hand. Grasp the attached sample ends in the other hand and pull apart. The attached sample is a replica of the main line in both content and weld characteristics. Any blood products exposed to leaking welds should be considered contaminated and processed according to established procedures. Examine the weld for leaks by rotating the attached sample 360 degrees and visually inspect the weld area for any leaking. If there are no leaks after pulling on the sample, open the sample weld by squeezing the edges of flanges of the weld between your thumbs and fingers. Squeeze the contents past the weld and pull on the tubing. If the weld on the attached sample is intact and no leaks are found, you may open the weld on the main. Avoid excessive or abusive handling of the welded tubing. Excessive pulling or bending of the weld could result in a leak. Just as with unwelded tubing, do not expose tubing to any solvents or excessive stress, such as heat or cold. Such exposure could compromise the integrity of the weld. Remove the used wafer and plastic holder and dispose of it according to your laboratory practices. Press the start button to reset the device to load position. The TCD is ready for another weld cycle. Tubing was pulled too tightly into taper lock. Tubing was pushed down into taper lock instead of being pulled into it. This will cause soft tubing to hang up on the side of the taper lock wall. Sample length is less than 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch. Not enough tubing is protruding from the clamp. Too much tubing is protruding from the clamp. Tubing was loaded on its side instead of stacked on top of each other. Do not attempt to service this device. Opening the case or ion generator cover or any other attempts to service the TCD B40 could result in possible injury and will void any and all warranties. This device must be serviced by the manufacturer. Contact your sales representative or Hemanetics for fast, reliable service for your device. Do not use solvents or abrasives to clean the TCD B40. Use a 10% solution of commercial bleach or a 70% solution of isopropyl alcohol to clean the device. Do not overwet the device or allow fluid to drip into the device. The total containment device. Simple, small, sure.